Morning, students. Today's topic is Introduction to API and Microservices from fourth module. Okay, so in the last class, we learned about CI/CD pipeline, continuous integration, delivery, and deployment. Okay, so in place of deployment, we need this API and microservices. So we know about API. So the expansion for API is application programming interface. Okay, so we build a code, develop the code, and tested the code in our platform with our communities, either in GitHub or whatever it is. We can able to push the code, change the codes, etc. Okay, the code is builded, tested, and the next stage is delivery and deployment. Okay, till delivery, we are using the Docker files, Docker images, Kubernetes, etc. Okay, then what is the necessity of this API and microservices? Okay, so this API and microservices are used in the place of deployment. Okay, while we are deploying the code. Okay, so while we are deploying the code as a exact model in the real time environment. Okay, for example, CCTV camera, which is placed on the road highways. Okay, it is capturing each vehicles, every vehicles are coming in which speed. If the speed is higher, it will put a fine for that particular person. Okay, so that is one kind of application. It's one machine learning model. Okay, it's capturing the image from capturing the particular vehicle from particular distance. It is captured as a video. Then video is converted into number of image frames. From that image frames, it is deciding which vehicle is coming faster or not. Okay, lot of machine learning applications nowadays we are using. Okay, identifying a person, etc., etc. Okay, so these models are deployed somewhere. Okay, after that only we can say the particular model is deployed and used in a real-time environment. Okay, so for this deployment, we need API and microservice where we are deploying the machine learning model means in a cloud environment, in a cloud environment, which means in a server. Okay, in a server based environment, in a cloud, we are deploying our entire model with the data sets, code, whatever we needed, etc. etc. All services, all codes and data sets are bundled together and deployed in the cloud to make it as a model. Okay, so in the place of deployment area, for deploying a model into the cloud, we need this API as well as the microservices. Okay, so we all know whatever we are surfing inside the internet, we need some protocols, HTTP, FTP. Okay, so nowadays everything, every softwares, whatever it is, we are using it as an applications in our mobile phone. Okay, we are not downloading any software. Everything can be accessed as an apps application. Okay, so to access this kind of apps and applications, we need this API, application programming interface. Okay, so this would act as an interface between the server and the user, the particular model and the server. Okay, because we hosted this entire model into the cloud environment. Okay, that's why we need this API and microservice. Okay, so this is the introduction about API. So this API and microservices are powerful tool that help to enable your machine learning model to become useful in the production environment. Okay, so after deploying a particular model into a cloud environment, then only we can say our model is in a production role. Okay, then only we can receive some benefits from that particular model. Okay, so using API and microservices, we can design a robust and scalable machine learning services for the business need. Okay, so with the support of API and microservice only, we can design a scalable and robust design. Okay, so it is mandatory of this API and microservice in the deployment area. So why we need this API? So the expansion, application programming interface. So it acts as an interface. You can see it in the picture. API is act as an intermediary between the database, or it may be a server, as well as various kinds of application. Okay, that application may be used in your tab, mobile phone, smartwatch, etc., etc. Okay, so whatever application you are using, the intermediary is application programming interface. Okay, so the function of API is it acts as a gateway and it enables the communication between the application and the server or else the database. Okay, so it provides the access to data and functionality. So this API can access the data in one side. That is the one concept of API. Okay, it can access the data as well as it can access the functionality of a particular model. Okay, so if a model is there, it may generate some data, right? Input, it may have some input data, it may generate some data. Okay, so the API can access the data as well as the API can access the functionality of a particular model. These are the two things done by the API, accessing the data as well as accessing the functionality of the model. Okay, so for these two reasons, we are using the API as an intermediary software. Okay, then. So these are some various types of application programming interface over the internet till nowadays we are using. Okay, the SOAP API protocol, then REST API, JSON, Drift, gRPC, GraphQL. So the major APIs we used till the 2000s is SOAP as well as the REST. Okay, so the expansion for SOAP, service-oriented architecture protocol. Okay, so that is working based upon the XML. Then REST is working based on XML and JSON. Till nowadays, maximum services like Amazon, YouTube, then Google, various kinds of popular websites are depending only upon the REST API, because compared to other recent APIs, this REST and SOAP is working as a better services, giving a better services and flexible service, and we can add additional codes or additional services easily to this API. Okay, so the popular API till nowadays also we are using is a REST, which is working based upon JSON and example. Okay, so these are some other APIs we are using till 2015. Okay, so maximum this all application programming interfaces are working based on JSON. Okay. So about API, we learned. The next is microservices. Why we need API as well as microservices? So from the title itself, we can see microservices or modern way of designing and deploying apps to run a service. Okay, so the microservices break down the application into smaller independent service. Okay, so yeah, the entire service is there, which means entire model is there. The advantage of the plus of microservices, we can break down the machine learning model into small services, independent services. That was the major advantage of this microservice. Okay, so the functionality of this is each service handles a single responsibility. Okay, so the consider the same previous example. In a highway, we are having the capturing cameras, video capturing cameras, how the vehicles are coming in. So what are the steps are there? It has to capture the video, then video has been splitted into number of images, then it is doing its purpose. For what purpose? That model is developed either for the speed capturing or every vehicle number capturing, whatever it is. What is the theme of the particular model? Based upon that, it is functioning. Okay, so various kinds of steps are there, right? Capturing the video, then converting into an image, then its particular operation. Okay, so this every operations are done as a services using this microservice concept. Okay, so this microservice allow team to work on isolated part of an application and making development more modular and scalable. So the major advantage of this microservice is the each module or like modules in a program we are using the concept modules. Okay, same thing is called here as microservices. So each module or each microservice can be developed by any one team. Okay, there is no compulsion that the complete model could be developed by a single team. Okay, so each part can be coded by a separate team. Okay, that is the major advantage of this microservice. Okay, so before this microservice, we are using another concept called as monolithic. Okay, so we must know the difference between both this monolithic and microservice architecture. So, what monolithic means? It's a traditional architecture where everything is tightly coupled in one large application. Which means in a microservice, each code or each service is acting as a separate modules. But in monolithic, the modules are there, but each modules are tightly coupled together. That was the drawback of monolithic. Okay, so if some error happens in one single module, it affects the entire thing. Okay, that's why we are moving from monolithic to microservice. Okay, so the advantage of microservices, if there is an error in one part of service, it won't affect the remaining services. Also, if you want to add additional codes or if you want to fetch any new service, it can be easily added to this microservice concept. It's a distributed architecture, okay, and independent to each other. So this microservice allow independent development, deployment, and scaling. It reduces the risk of system-wide failure. Okay, failure rate of this microservice concept is very less compared to monolithic architecture. So in the deployment side, we are using API as well as the microservice concept. Okay. So this is the architecture of microservice as well as monolithic architecture. So this is the monolithic architecture. So you can see here the entire applications are combined together, tightly coupled. So if there is any failure in this service, it can affect the entire things. Okay, so it entirely connected to the database. So this is the drawback of monolithic. That's why we are moving into microservice architecture. Here, each service is separately connected to the database. Okay, finally, the all together it is connected to the API application programming interface. Okay, so to deploy some machine learning model into the cloud, we need API as well as this microservice concept. Okay. So why we need this microservice architecture in machine learning? So because of the modularity as well as reliability. Okay, so as I said earlier, each code can be separated as modules and independent. Okay, that is modularity. Then reliability, if one service fails, it won't affect the remaining. Okay, so this microservice allow developers to isolate components such as model serving, monitoring, and logging. It can improve the system resilience. Okay, so this is one machine learning use case model given car repair facility. Okay, the problem statement is car repair facility. The concept or steps we have to follow here is the cameras are fixed there. Okay, the cameras have to capture the image of every cars and its position is classified. Okay, so in which position the cars are parked, based upon that it is capturing the image and it is given to the facilitative state estimator. Okay, so the same machine learning problem is given to both monolithic as well as the microservice architecture. Okay, so the scenario is a facility uses IP cameras to track the position of cars. Okay, so in our stage one, we are using the proof of concept as monolithic architecture. Okay, so here a single Python application fetches camera streams and estimate the position. Okay, a single model, a single application we are using to do all this task. Okay, capturing the image, positioning the car, and facilitating the Next use case. Okay. So in the proof of concept stage, monolithic app is built to showcase the concept. Okay. So here the crash risk as well as the scaling issue may happen. Okay. If some failure happens in the single point, it gets affected the complete monolithic app. Entire system gets failure. Okay. So it is given into the next stage of architecture called as microservice. This microservice is used in the production side. Okay, in the at the after deployment in the production area. Okay, so here modularization is the main theme of microservice. Here we are breaking down the app into services. Okay, so video stream collector is one service, position classifier is one service, then facility state estimator is next service. Each act as a separate individual microservices. Okay, so if failures occurs in position classifier, it won't affect the remaining two services. Okay, that's why microservices act as an best to connect to the API. Okay, so same scenario which is explained for both monolithic as well as the microservice. Okay, so in microservice, the components we are using is video stream collector to collect the video input, then image processor, it will convert the video into number of images, then position classifier, it will estimate the position of the car head and tail, then facility setup estimator, it receives the car position estimation and calibrate the facility setup and send real-time data to the cloud. Okay, so major thing is we have to deploy a model into the cloud. That's why we are using this API and microservice. So these are the benefits, scalability and flexibility. Okay, so the microservices communication with API. So this microservices, individual modules are communicating to the application programming interface, which gets connected to the cloud. Okay, application. So this API gateways act as a intermediary service. Okay, so mainly used as a microservice to communicate efficiently between the services. Okay, so for this microservices, each microservices get communicating to each other. Okay, each microservice is communicating with each other. So for this communication, we need API, application programming interface. We need API here as well as we need API from server to cloud. Okay. So for all communication, all interfacing, we need API. Okay. So that API is REST-based API we are using in the microservices. Okay. As I already said, a lot of APIs are there. Okay, these are a set of APIs we are using in the networking area, but the best API till nowadays we are using is REST API. Okay, so we used microservices in the machine learning models. So for the communication between these microservices, we are using the REST API. Okay, so REST as well as RESTful. So we'll see the explanation for this REST API. So the REST API or RESTful API is working based upon the REST architecture. Okay, representational state transfer. Okay, representational state transfer. So this method is mainly used to communicate the web service development and deployment. Okay, so this REST API is used in Amazon, Google, LinkedIn, Twitter. Okay, all main web services or using this RESTful or REST API. Okay, so this REST API based microservice, so serving our machine learning model via RESTful API has many benefits, such as also this will show you the benefits of using REST API. Okay, so the server prediction on the fly to multiple user, then add more instances. If you want to add some functionality, we can easily add with the support of the REST API. REST API has the facility to add new instances. Okay, so then possibly combine multiple models using different API, then separate our model operating environment in different environment. This REST API will work pakka. Then enable microservice based architecture. So this REST will support microservice architecture. That's why we are using the REST API for connecting or communicating to the microservices. Okay, so we know why we are going from machine learning to MLOps. Okay, machine learning means just we are collecting some data set, applying some algorithm, and we are getting some output. Okay, that is machine learning. Once we are making it to a model, means we have to test the code, build a code into an images. We have to deliver and deploy the code. That is mandatory. Otherwise, it is no usage of developing a machine learning code and some output. Okay, so once we convert into a model and deploying it to a real-time environment, then only we can get the business value. Okay, so for deployment, we need some application programming interface, APIs. So in that, we are using microservices concept. So to get communication to microservices, we are using the REST API, and these are the advantage of using the microservice APIs, REST API. Okay, so these are common methods or steps, or we can say this as commands. Okay, commands which is supported to REST API and HTTP. So we all studied HTTP in web technology. Okay, so set of commands are there to fetch the code, give the request, accept the request. Okay, so the commands used in HTTP as well as commands used in the REST API is compared here. These are the commands used in REST API. Okay, so in HTTP, the request is created by using the command get. Okay, so instead of get in REST API, we are using the command read. The purpose of read in machine learning application is get request is used to read or retrieve a resource representation and returns a representation in XML or JSON. Okay, so what is JSON? JavaScript object notification, JSON. So you can get the resource representation in the XML or JSON format. Okay, to get the request, we are using a command called as read instead of get. Okay, then in place of post, we are using a command called as create in REST API. Okay, so the usage of post request is often used to create a new resource. Okay, for ML application, it is used to infer predictive machine learning models. Okay, then in place of put method, we are using update or replace. Update or replace in REST API. So this is used to replace or update the resource, which can be an object or file. As I said earlier, we are using an update command. Okay, or we are using a git commands, push and pull command, or committing a changes. Okay, so that places we can use this update and replace. So in ML application, it is often used to send a file for ML reference, for example JPEG image and file classify. Then instead of patch method, we are using update or modify. This is used to update or modify the resources. The resources can be file, object, or input data set, whatever it is. Then finally delete. This is used to delete a resource. In machine learning, this is used to delete a microservice or a file. Okay, why instead of REST this is named as crude, means the short form of each method. Create, see, then in place of read, we are using R here. Then U means update, then D means delete. Shortly, this is called as CRUD method. Okay, just create, read, update, and delete. These are the methods used in the REST API. Okay, so what are the methods used in REST API? Create, read, update, and delete. Okay, shortly it is called as CRUD methods. Okay, these are the REST API methods used to access the machine learning applications. Okay, so developing a microservice using Docker. So this microservice as well as API can be developed and deployed in Docker also. So this is small example how the Docker is supporting you to develop microservices. And after developing microservices, the API can be tested by building a Docker image, then run a Docker container locally, then test the API service using sample data and test the endpoint and execute to make a post call to test the endpoint. This is how we are testing the API in the Docker. While you are experimenting in your lab experiment, you can check how the Docker is supporting for creating microservices as well as API. Okay. So in this lecture, we learned about why we are using microservices and what is the necessity of using API, application programming interface, and which method of API we are using in MLOps. Okay, so we must need a microservices as well as API to deploy a machine learning model over the cloud. So while deploying a cloud, we are using our machine learning models as a microservices, small services rather than the monolithic approach. So the microservices has to communicate with each other, as well as it must need a communication between the server as well as the particular service. So to make a communication properly, we need an application programming interface. So for that API, we are using a REST method. Okay, REST API or RESTful API method. Okay, so this is about API as well as microservices. Thank you.